Reviews and
In 1968, from the bitter end, actor Dustin Hoffman talking to owner Fred Weintraub.
Here's some of the things that said in the papers today. Dustin Hoffman is the most delightful film hero of our generation. Dustin Hoffman is nothing short of superb, funny, outrageous, and touching. Dustin Hoffman is certainly one of the best actors of his generation. Certainly, he is the best American film comedian since Jack Lemmon. Dustin Hoffman, it's a pleasure to have you here. Really great. For those of you who haven't seen The Graduate, you had better go because it's going to be difficult to get into, and it is one of the most exciting new movies of the year. The bitter end, being in Greenwich Village, is a breeding ground for many actors. You were in Greenwich Village for quite a while. In fact, you were telling me that before the bitter end, you worked when it was called the Cock and Bull. That was before I was there. Is that right? What did you do there?
It was a coffee shop.
Right, I know that.
It's I guess when off Broadway first started.
Right.
And I did a play there. It was the first time I ever acted in New York. There was no reviews, and we played it for about 2 weeks. And I think one of the reasons they let us do it there is because the set was a coffee shop. So they didn't have to build a set for it.
And then you were in A right down the street,
Which is right nearby.
Right, right. Well, there's so many good actors who come out of Greenwich Village, and everybody kind of thinks of the Village as such a touristy place. But actually, there is a lot of creative things that are going on. The things that are people saying about you now, do you think that it's going to force you to take the same type of role? Or do you think you're going to be able to break away from the mold that it's gotten you, what sort of says about you, you know?
Well, I don't want to do that. I think I'm fortunate in the respect that I don't have any contractual obligations. In the old days, and even in the new days, if you're an unknown and you do a picture, they want an option on you to do a lot of pictures, right. And you don't get to look at the script, and they throw it at you. So I almost blew the job because I didn't want to have that problem. So I'm free to do what I want, but... I mean,
it's like Errol Flynn had to do those kind of movies, you know,
I think,
all the same type year after year, and...
Either that or they put them in jail because you're contracted to work for them. I don't want to do that, but it's a funny thing that when it happens, and suddenly I read the reviews, and I've seen the movie a couple times, and people laugh and they seem to respond, and I suddenly become very much aware of the possibility of creating an image. And it's a tough temptation not to take, because it's very tempting to suddenly do that same kind of role over and over again and just become a star. And yet I would rather just do roles that are different types of people.
Dustin, there's a part in The Graduate, and I've got to tell you and ask you really about this, because so many guys have come up to me and asked me about this. The scene, there is a scene in it, I won't be giving anything away, when you arrange to have an affair, your first affair, with a woman in a hotel room. And the incidents that occur, every single guy I know who's seen it comes up to me and says, oh God, I remember how that happened. Did you ever have something like that happen to you? Did you ever have that kind of an incident occur? I know it's a little personal, but I kind of feel that, you know, you don't have to answer personal questions, you know. It's,
well, I never had that experience. I never, the first affair I had was not in a hotel, and after that, in fact, I don't think I've ever had that experience, but when I had to do it, I mean...
Did Mike Nichols insist that you go out and have an affair and register in a hotel?
No, he said it's very frightening. He said, did this ever happen to you in a hotel? And I said, no. He said, well, what is comparable to it that is personal to you, or that... And I thought of something that I thought worked for me, and it's that I was never able, I still can't, you know, I used to be never able to go in a drugstore and ask for certain things. And I just,
it's the same kind of thing.
It's the same feeling.
It's all changed now, I hear, though.
I think it's now changed.
What do you think about the boy the boy Benjamin in the film? I mean, would you call him optimistic about his future? Do you think he's going to make us mark? I mean, what do you think about the type of anti-hero character that you represent?
Well, he's just, there's nothing, I don't think, unusual about him. He just questions, he's a particular, he's not every boy or every man. He's a particular kind of young guy that comes from a very affluent background, and it's been pushed down his throat. And I guess he's just trying to find some kind of value that's true to himself, and I don't think it's complicated. I think at the end of the movie, where the movie ends, I think I have a hunch. My feeling is that his real trouble starts.
Right at the end.
Yeah, that's if it were the dropout or the graduate strikes back or something.
Well, you know, it's interesting that the parents are middle-class parents in a good suburban home who really are trying to do everything for their children, and yet are almost killing them and destroying the young people. Do you think that's happened today? I mean, do you think there's really this whole youth movement is really as strong and effective, or do you think it's the same as it was generation to generation? You know, you got to answer these kind of questions now because of a role. I know it's kind of funny, Dustin.
I feel ignorant, I guess. I can't, people talk about hippies or young people, and I don't know. I mean, I guess everybody's different. I guess they have things in common, but I would guess that there is something kind of wonderful happening now, is that years ago, you couldn't say that if your father was a teacher or a philosopher, you were ashamed to say it. If he was a businessman, you could hit it. And today, it seems to be the opposite. You're kind of proud of the fact if your father's an out-of-work painter.
Yeah.
And if he's a businessman, you're a little ashamed of it. And I think it's kind of nice because it seems to have some kind of cultural feeling behind it. We're a bunch of people, I guess, that came to this country broke years ago, and our fathers and everything busted their keister to make a living, and
right.
and it's different, and it's different now, and it's you know, they pushed for values which were all they knew, and they've given us, I guess, values that are better, maybe, or that we're beginning to learn, or that are more valuable.
Was your youth like that, do you think?
Kind of. I really didn't come from that kind of wealth, but my father was a ditch digger, and from Chicago. I was born in Los Angeles, and he was hustling to make a living in the Depression. And it's something that we're very much unaware of. I was talking to him the other day, and he was saying that he has a feeling that in Russia, the big revolution is going to be with the youth there who are just beginning to want what he wanted when he was a boy. They want a little affluence, and maybe in about 30 or 40 years,
they'll have a big hippie movement.
They'll be, yeah. It has to, you know.
Well, even though the hippie movement wasn't really big, the fact is that it's influenced tremendously what's happened among the youth and their ideas. I mean, young people graduating today are going much more into social kind of things than into business.
What's different about it than when I went to high school is I noticed it on the Sunset Strip. We were shooting there, and I grew up in Los Angeles, and I used to see the Sunset Strip. I used to go there on Friday nights, and it was very scary because you'd be in a car with a girl, and the guy would drive next to you and gun his motor, and with ducktails and everything. It scared the hell out of you, you know. And I used to be very scared. And today, you don't have that. You have another movement, a so-called hippie or whatever it is on the Strip, and they're not frightening. And if I have to take my pick, I'd rather not be scared by people. And there's a tendency not to be so. The symbol for adulthood is no longer the fist, it seems, and that's the best part, I think.
Dustin, you remember all the troubles they had maybe 8 or 10 years ago with so-called teenage gangs, and now you don't hear anything about it. No, you hear about dropouts now, that's right, flower children, but you don't hear about the violence of that type. The violence now comes from the adults.
And the funny thing about it is that it seems that the society seems to be more frightened of this than they were of the gangs. That's what I don't quite understand. But this seems to scare them more, because maybe this makes them look into their own values.
Don't you like being in this business which has so many young people in it and so many young aggressive people? I kind of love having a nightclub in the Village, and and meeting so many young people, because the ideas are even changing me rather than the reverse situation. It's kind of an exciting way to go through more than one life, because exactly what you said is what we all went through.
I feel a little out of it. I feel they're ahead of me. I feel they've left me somewhere, I must say. I'm not an old man, but I feel that I can't seem to keep up with them.
Well, Dustin, I'm delighted you came by here. You are going to be one of our big actors in this business, and from the great beginning you've had, I hope it continues.
Thank you very much.
You're a very special guest for us at the bitter end.